The story of Chris Henry is one of the worst kind of tragedies. Tragedy that interrupts hope. But even interrupted hope can eventually resume its former state. Hope can be reborn. Literally. But to truly appreciate this journey, we gotta go back to the inception. Start again at the roots and briefly relive the journey. And by the end of it this time, maybe we have a better appreciation. Over 10 years ago, the passing of Chris Henry shook the NFL world to its core. He was a troubled young man who decided to make a change, but he unfortunately never had the opportunity to reach his potential. When Chris Henry was born, his grandmother believed that dude would grow up to make a serious impact on this world. So she took a sewing machine and made him a football cushion when he was just a baby. And you can kind of say that he never really put it down. But after making it to the highest level, Chris would run into some issues. At one point, he was arrested 4 times in about a 6-month span. He was acting erratic, suffering from headaches, but this was the early 2000s and people didn't really recognize the signs. But of course, today we know that these can be symptoms of chronic traumatic encephalopathy or CTE. Things would calm down at a point, but they would all come to a screeching halt on that one terrible night. It's finally time for us to dive into the legend of Chris Henry, a story of hope that was once destroyed by tragedy, but has been slowly pieced back together by love and friendship. As a high school senior, Chris Henry was named New Orleans Small Schools Player of the Year. His 6'4" slim frame now allowed him to clutch a real football as easily as he could once clutch the cushion that his grandma sewed. Chris grew up without his father around, but him and his mom was really close. Seeing the strength that she spoke with even after Chris's accident shows you how rock solid of a person she is. So I'm sure she was a great mother. She even still supports the team, and you know all us Bengals fans are giving that love back. This picture is from a moment during last year's playoff run where you can see Miss Carolyn accompanied by a throw blanket that looks to be crafted the same way that Chris's first football was. According to Chris's cousin Tony Henry, Chris did have positive male role models to look up to in the form of his uncles. And while I'm sure he wasn't perfect, as none of us are, there's nothing I read that suggested that Chris was ever a bad kid. He was a regular church attendee and even sang in a choir at one point. Still, Chris would manage to find trouble later in his life and would even be labeled with the NFL bad boy tag that would prove difficult to shake. So in 2013, West Virginia had a solid recruiting class. They signed 14 of the nation's top 1,000 recruits. On top of that, they also got these 2 lowly little 2-star recruits way down here. Now these 2-star prospects didn't know it at the time, but over the course of the next several years, these dudes would rise through the ranks and become top players on the highest level of the sport. The 2 young men will become linked together, a bond that will become so strong that it would even endure beyond this life. This is the legend of Chris Henry and the real Pacman Jones, aka what happened to Chris Henry. But other than that, you already know what time it is, fellas. Cue the Wayne.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Alright, real quick before we jump in, a word from today's video sponsor, Aura. What's the fastest growing crime in America? Identity theft. You got a new victim out here every 14 seconds. So a few months back, somebody actually tried to buy like 10 PS5s with my homeboy's information. Problem is, dude been a certified Xbox fanboy since like the first Halo came out. This was a clear case of attempted identity theft. He was able to clean that situation up, but it's not always so simple. That's why I'm excited to partner with today's sponsor, Aura. So Aura is identity theft protection, fraud protection, a VPN, password management, and an antivirus software all in one app. Chances are you probably have one of these services already, but if you don't have all the tools, it's kind of like setting a laser tripwire at your front door, but then forgetting you left the back door just completely wide open and unattended. Bro, imagine trying to log into your email account and you see your password was just changed a couple hours ago. Then you start getting random notifications of activity with your bank account, credit cards, crypto accounts, etc. It's pretty damn scary, but unfortunately a reality for way too many people. Fortunately, Aura monitors the dark web for your emails, passwords, and social security numbers. And they send alerts fast, straight to your phone and email. Aura actually found my info on 2 dark web sites and made it pretty damn easy for me to change those passwords and therefore eliminating the threat. They also give you real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries, and they help you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. So protect your family and yourself from identity theft at aura.com/FlemLo. All you gotta do, just click the link down in the description. And if you sign up right now, Aura's gonna give you a 2-week free trial with my link so you can see for yourself how many times Aura finds you and your family's information out here on the dark web. Also, if you sign up, let me know down in the comment section if your personal information had been compromised, and I can promise you, you won't regret checking. Other than that though, shout out to Aura for sponsoring. Without further ado, let's get it. So Chris Henry and Pacman Jones were a part of the same 2002 recruiting class at West Virginia, just 2 of 27 signees. I actually thought I was looking at the wrong damn list for a second, but after you scroll down for a minute past all the 3 stars, you eventually get here, to the 18th and 19th players on the list. Adam Jones and Chris Henry. These two would get recruited to the same school, become roommates, get drafted in the same draft. Man, at one point in the league, they even got basically indefinite suspensions at the same exact time. But on a serious note, they were truly brothers. While neither man was perfect, they both shared a common dominant trait: loyalty. And in this world, loyalty is one of the most sought after and respected traits a person can have. But if you're not careful, it could also get you in trouble. And both men would suffer at different points in their lives when they were basically loyal to the wrong people. But as they got older and matured, we'd eventually get to see that loyalty in its truest form. But way back in 2003, both players would leave their marks on the field in only their second seasons at West Virginia. Pacman caught 4 interceptions and had nearly 1,000 return yards alone. He was named second team all-conference. After getting playing time off the bench as a freshman, Pacman had settled in nicely by year 2. But for Chris, his second season at West Virginia was actually the first time he was able to get on the field. Still, judging off his play, you would have never knew it. Dude caught 41 passes and became only the second player in the school's history to go for over 1,000 receiving yards in a single season. He scored 10 touchdowns in his first go at it. Then the next year, he scored 12. A lot changed during the roommates' third and final season at West Virginia. They went from mildly known 2-star recruits to top NFL draft prospects. Unfortunately, Chris's final season at West Virginia introduced a different side of him. He was suspended by head coach Rich Rodriguez multiple times for breaking several different team rules. And the final suspension came after Chris took his helmet off in the game after getting frustrated with the quarterback. When he took his helmet off, he was real demonstrative and might have made a gesture or two out of frustration towards his QB. Head coach Rich Rodriguez had strong words after the game, saying Chris was an embarrassment to himself and the university. When asked about his frustration, Chris stated that his numbers would have definitely been better at West Virginia if he had, and I quote, a real quarterback. He would later clarify by saying that his quarterback was good, but he was a running quarterback. That's really all he meant by it, but at that point, the story was already out there, it was too late. Despite that, many of Chris's teammates spoke very highly of him. And that's something that would follow him into the NFL. You'd see dude getting in trouble here and there, and you'd hear things about him in the media, but he was one of those dudes where the people who actually knew him, they loved him, man. They never had a bad word to say about him. One example from Chris's college days was now West Virginia Hall of Fame lineman Dan Moses saying this, and I quote, "I like him. I think he's a pretty good guy. He's not really immature, but he's immature talking to reporters. He may say some things he doesn't mean, but he doesn't have any bad intentions." But the damage to Chris's draft stock had already been done. Now instead of a fringe first rounder, he was set to be a mid-round pick, as he was going to be seen as a gamble for whatever team selected him. When the 2005 NFL draft rolled around, the 2-star studs were both selected. Pacman wasn't just the first corner taken off the board. Dude was the first defensive player taken altogether. His ability as a do-it-all cover corner who was also a Pro Bowl caliber return man helped him to go top 10, 6th overall to the Tennessee Titans. Chris Henry, aka Slim, would have to wait a little while longer. Finally, in the third round, my Cincinnati Bengals came calling. Chris would now be separated from his college roommate, but would join a different set of college roommates in Cincinnati, Chad Johnson and TJ Houshmandzadeh. These three would form one of the most dynamic receiving cores in the league, and is actually very similar to the Bengals wide receiver core today. You had Chad in the place of Jamar as that dynamic X who can do it all, Houshmandzadeh in the place of Tyler Boyd, each being one of the top slot receivers of their era, and in the place of T. Higgins, you had Chris Henry, a big body receiver who was smooth as hell, and despite not getting the bulk of the attention, he was unbelievable in his role as the Z receiver, as he really wasn't deficient in any category as far as on the field play. Good speed, good size, good hands, and massively slept on by most of the league. As a rookie, Chris caught 31 passes for 433 yards and 6 touchdowns, which is actually more impressive than you probably realize. So keep in mind, this was a rookie on an 11-5 playoff team with two other veteran receivers who both went over or right at 1,000 yards. Not to mention a running back in Rudy Johnson who rushed for nearly 1,500 yards on the ground. Like, there wasn't too many yards left to go around to your third round rookie receiver. But Chris was fitting in well and was a huge asset for the squad. His 6'4" frame made for a great red zone target, but not only that, dude could move, man, and he was smooth with it. Slim's career at that moment was set up pretty nicely. He had two great mentors both on and off the field, a Pro Bowl quarterback who led the league in passing touchdowns in Chris's rookie year, and a great role on the team that he would continue to grow into. The Bengals' 2005 wildcard playoff game presents one of the biggest what-if scenarios in NFL history. The Bengals faced off against hated division rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chris Henry never blinked once. Despite being a rookie, dude was about to show the world that he was at his best when the lights were brightest. On the second offensive play of the game, the rookie catches a 66-yard bomb down the sideline to open up for the Bengals. He was on his way to having a monster day with the defensive game plan, having to focus on slowing down Chad and TJ. Like, this game was supposed to be both Chris's and the Bengals coming out party. But the nosy neighbors ended up picking up the phone, calling the cops, and getting the party shut down early. Alright, enough with the metaphors. Carson Palmer got hurt on that exact same 66-yard play. A few plays later, Chris goes down with an injury of his own, and at that point, it was pretty much a wrap. When Carson and Chris got hurt, the team morale completely tanked, and a 10-0 lead quickly evaporated. That one game would set the Bengals back so far that this 11-5 team who was leading a playoff game 10-0 would not win another playoff game until 17 years later. This past season, with a new face of the franchise and a new three-headed wide receiver core. And not before several more traumatic football events, but I digress. The following year, Carson Palmer honestly wasn't the same in how he moved, but statistically, he was still good. The triplets were back, and this year, Chris was so good, he scored more touchdowns than Chad despite playing 3 less games. And even though that sounds good and you can see his career building, the reason he missed those 3 games, that's the real story here. Like, that's the direction we're about to go. So Chris had racked up multiple arrests and was finally suspended in October of 2006. He finished that season with 36 catches, 605 yards, and 9 touchdowns as basically like the 4th option on the offense. But his arrests and increasingly erratic behavior both on and off the field was really starting to dim his light. Over in Tennessee, his old college roommate was having similar issues. He showed promise on the field as well, but his off the field issues were also overshadowing his skills. It's actually kind of crazy how much their careers mirror each other. These two would get recruited to the same school, become roommates, drafted in the same draft. Man, at one point in the league, they even got indefinite suspensions at the same exact time. So check out this ESPN article from 2007. Goodell suspends Pacman and Henry for multiple arrests. Adam Pacman Jones of Tennessee was suspended Tuesday for the entire 2007 NFL season, and Chris Henry of Cincinnati received an 8-game suspension, half of the 2007 NFL season, both for numerous violations of the NFL's personal conduct policy. The 2 players were suspended without pay, the NFL announced. Jones will lose $1.2 million of his 2007 base salary as a result of the suspension. Henry will lose a little over $200,000. After they serve their suspensions, each player must then apply for reinstatement. So what are the odds that two best friends and college roommates who now play on completely different teams would both get basically indefinite suspensions for unrelated violations all at the same damn time? That is nuts. Imagine if the story of these two roommates would have ended like this. All that striving and grinding to make it to the league just to both be tossed out the same way they came in, together. Over the next few years, while Pacman bounced around from being out of football completely to playing for the Cowboys to going to the CFL, while he was doing all of that and going through his journey, Chris had began the process of cleaning up his act after being arrested 4 times during a 6-month span between 2005 and 2006. Then he had his suspension in 2007. By 2008, the Bengals had enough and outright released Chris Henry, but they brought him back in 2009, and at that point, Chris had kind of gone through a metamorphosis, and he was doing everything he could to make the most of his second chance. Chris had really buckled down, was focusing on his mental, and he was looking to turn the corner. After his 5th and final arrest, Chris had found some level of peace. When this NBC article was published in June of 2009, Chris hadn't had a legal run-in for well over a year. Dude was really getting his act together. The article itself echoes the same sentiment that Chris was putting his troubled past behind him. It talks about how hard he'd been working during his off-season programs and how he was looking to really chase his potential, which he had not even began to tap into. Check out these 2 quotes from the article. "I just got tired of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I had to do it for me and my family. I love to play football and I ain't want to blow it. He's got a great attitude. I'm just really proud of the guy. I'm happy for him. He's at a good place in his life and a good place for his family. He showed up to work here, and he will all year long. There's no doubt about it. Bro, he's changed. People think he got this bad image, but when you get to know him, he's really a cool guy, a humble guy, just a regular person just like everybody else." Quotes like this can be found from numerous teammates of Chris. But the security guy talking about Chris, "We just hit it off. I don't know why. He was one of the kindest, most thoughtful people I have ever met in my entire life." You hear the expression, "give you the shirt off his back"? That was Chris to a T. Now that I think about it, maybe that was his downfall at times. If somebody said, "let's do something," he just couldn't say no. He'd realize it wasn't in his best interest, but he never wanted to hurt anybody's feelings. He was a kind, gentle human being and respectful of his elders. You couldn't ask for a better person. So it sounds like that NBC article was definitely on to something. But sadly, only a few months after that article was published, celebrating Chris's turnaround, tragedy would strike, and bad news would permeate through the NFL world and beyond. There are several accounts of what happened that night, as Chris's passing was definitely marred in some controversy. But Chris's mom has made peace with it, and it really just don't sit well with me to be digging up conspiracy theories or anything like that, just out of respect to the family. So I'm just gonna do it like this. Based on the collection of stories, here's the basic synopsis of what we could gather. Chris had gotten into an argument of some sort with his fiance. Anybody out there in a real adult relationship? Arguments happen. As the argument began to heat up, Chris's fiance decided, she was gonna hop in the truck and leave. Chris did not want her to leave. He wanted to talk about the situation right then and there, try to clear the air. But it seems like she may have felt maybe he wasn't in the right state of mind in that moment to have the discussion, or maybe she felt she just needed to cool off and kind of get away for a little bit. So in the heat of the moment, when she gets into the truck, it was a yellow pickup truck, Chris jumps into the back of the truck. The truck continues down the street past the homes of several neighbors, and at some point during the incident, Chris falls off the back of the truck. Bits and pieces of the incident were witnessed by several neighbors, and one neighbor put in a call to 911. Here's a snippet from the call.
"I need a police officer on Oak Road. I'm riding behind a yellow truck. It's a F-150. The tag says it's got a black man on it with no shirt on it, and he's got his arm in a cast. He's got some black pants on. He's beating on the back of this truck window, and the truck is driving. I don't know if he's trying to break in it or something. It just looks crazy. It's a girl driving it, going down Oakdale Road."
I'm on Oakdale Road. I just pulled up, and there's a lady there's a man in the road. There's no movement. I don't know what happened. We just pulled up here. Yeah, there's a crowd of people around him right now.
Okay. Can you find out if he's awake?
or?
No, he's definitely unconscious. He is not awake.
He was eventually rushed to the hospital, but sadly, there wasn't anything the doctors could do. Following Chris's passing, everybody was so hurt and heartbroken because they knew he was making changes and trying to go in the right direction, trying to be a better man for his family and for himself. At 26 years old, he had found his muse, his peace, and his purpose to get up and do this every day. And it's so messed up because it had just clicked for him. He still had some work to do over the next several years, but bro, he was on the right path. You feel what I'm saying? For me, I was 27 when it clicked for me. And bro, the changes I made since I was 27 and it clicked for me to now at 34, it's like I'm a completely different person. So when you see a guy like this lose his life so young before he really even had a chance, like I know you can legally drink at 21, you don't really become like a whole man until late 20s, early 30s for most of us. There are obviously exceptions, some earlier, some later, some never. But you could very clearly see the path he was on. So the fact that he wasn't able to continue, and finish that route, bro, it's just, it's really, really fucking sad, man. Following Chris's passing, it was confirmed that he did suffer from CTE, brain trauma sustained from the sport that had been with him since the beginning. The deadly condition was likely the cause of many of Chris's erratic behavior during his NFL days, and there's a pretty good chance that those symptoms led him to the events that would eventually take his life. Here's a quote from his mom talking about Chris's symptoms after he had passed. I know the major thing was headaches, the mood swings, the forgetfulness or lack of patience. You think you're with this one person and then the next time he's a totally different person. I was wondering if it was just me or just the family noticing it, but it was confirmed when he got the CT scan and they were talking about it. The paperwork I was reading said that part of the issues he could have had was early Alzheimer's, early dementia. That's scary. On the night of Chris's accident, his mom had to make a decision that I can't even imagine having to make as a parent. She thought Chris had simply sustained some injuries, but soon found out that the doctors would not be able to save her son's life. So she agreed to sign for Chris to be an organ donor, a decision that has since saved the lives of several people. Today, Chris's pancreas, liver, lungs, and kidneys are still a part of this world. And if not for Chris Henry, the people you see here on screen hugging Chris's mom, they actually would not be here today. What do you see when you look at this picture? A good person? A bad person? A person. What makes a person good or bad? Criminal record? Public donations? Of course not. It's none of that. Adam Pacman Jones is a great man and a great friend. After his college roommate passed away, Pacman actually adopted Chris's sons, moved them into his home, and helped raise them like they were his own. Contrary to popular belief, Chris Henry and Pacman Jones were never teammates in the NFL. But after Chris passed, Pacman decided to join the organization that his best friend had played his entire NFL career with. Adam Pacman Jones would go on to play 7 years with the Bengals. And now when many people think of Pacman in the NFL, you picture him in stripes. He made his first Pro Bowl with the Bengals, his first All-Pro with the Bengals, and players like him and Chad always kept Chris's spirit alive. And not that you could before, but at this point, ain't nobody could say a bad word about Adam Pacman Jones to me. I'm not trying to hear that shit at all. This right here is Chris Henry Jr., a spitting image of his dad too. This 6'3", 170-pound wide receiver is 14 years old, okay? He's about to become a high school freshman and he's already got a scholarship offer to The Ohio State. Today he finds himself in a similar position to the one Chris and Pac found themselves in way back in 2002. But if he ends up being just a 2-star recruit, they can go ahead and throw away the high school ranking system. Unfortunately, Chris's dad isn't here to go on these visits with him. Still, he managed to leave him in pretty damn good hands. So in more ways than one, the legend of Chris Henry continues to live on. As his grandma predicted, he grew to become someone special, and today leaves a legacy that goes even beyond the field. The friendships he made during this time still endure, and his family is still strong. They found hope, even in the midst of tragedy. If you're not winning in life right now at this moment in time, bro, you got a golden opportunity right in front of you. Take a good look at the people supporting you now. Cherish those people, because those are the people that you'll be able to count on in the future if things ever were to go bad. Those people love you for you. Be loyal to them. Then maybe you can build a bond that's everlasting.